at-risk people and places. What is meant by exposure? Exposure is the extent to which a population or place is physically at risk from a hazard. It differs from vulnerability, which addresses how well a population can respond to a hazard. Learn more about this on the Vulnerable Populations page. The closer a population to a hazard, the greater their exposure and therefore risk. However, different volcanic hazards expose different populations. Ash travels long distances, whilst lava flows affect a smaller area but destroy everything in their path. What makes populations more exposed? Click to find out more. Living close to a volcano hazard zone. Communities living near volcanoes or in the path of volcanic hazards are highly exposed. Limited access to transport routes. Many volcanic hazard zones are only accessible by 1 or 2 roads. When primary or secondary hazards block these routes, communities become cut off and remain exposed inside the hazard zone for longer. Dependence on local infrastructure. When this infrastructure is damaged by volcanic hazards, the communities that rely on it become more exposed. Blocked roads and loss of electricity can prevent evacuation, forcing people to remain physically inside the hazard zone, which increases overall exposure. Visiting hazard zones daily. This may be for work, school, religious practices, or other general daily activities. By travelling to these areas, populations increase their exposure to volcanic hazards. Exposure across everyday locations. The maps below show everyday locations people regularly visit. By understanding where the frequent locations sit in relation to nearby volcanoes, you can better prepare yourself, your family, and your friends by recognising these locations. Scroll to explore and click on the map to identify exposed locations near you. You'll find small links to vulnerability at these locations by using pop-ups, yet these are further explained here. Volcano locations. New Zealand's volcanic landscapes are foundational to where people live, go to work, and travel to. The volcano locations seen on the map are essential to understanding exposure, as fundamentally the closer to a volcano something is, the greater its exposure to volcanic hazards. Hospitals. Hospitals are essential services that must remain open during volcanic emergencies. This means the staff and patients will remain exposed to volcanic hazards, as evacuation of all patients is unlikely. Damage to power, water and access can increase exposure further. Care homes. Like hospitals, care homes provide essential 24-hour care, so cannot easily close during a volcanic emergency. This means staff and patients must remain exposed to volcanic hazards unless the full evacuation is possible. Schools are places where staff and students spend long periods of time each day. When a school is situated within a volcanic hazard zone, everyone there becomes exposed. Places of worship. These are fixed locations that host large gatherings at set times of the day. If a volcanic eruption occurs during one of these gatherings and the site is in a hazard zone, then those attending the service would be exposed. Airports. Airports bring together a large number of passengers and staff. When airports are located within a hazard zone, a large number of people are exposed to volcanic hazards, especially because ash, gas, and aviation disruptions affect people and the aircraft. Electricity grid. The electricity grid itself does not directly affect population exposure to primary volcanic hazards, but if damaged, local communities can lose power, exposing them indirectly to a potential loss of lighting, heating, etc. Roads. Roads are widely used across New Zealand, with many lying close to volcanoes. Using roads nearby to volcanoes during an eruption increases exposure to volcanic ash and gas. This often occurs during evacuations. Where are residents most exposed? This map shows where people lived in 2023 alongside New Zealand's volcanoes, highlighting where the most residents are exposed. The Auckland volcanic field has the greatest exposure because of high population. But as future eruptions can occur at different locations across the field, exposure will shift over time. Although the region remains well monitored, staying aware of your local area is essential to staying safe. Use pop-ups and the legend to explore how exposure changes across New Zealand. Note: whilst the South Island has no active volcanoes, so exposure is lower, awareness of hazards is still key. Some secondary hazards, such as landslides, can still occur on dormant volcanoes, and ash from North Island eruptions can travel south depending on wind direction. It is therefore essential that all residents remain aware of their local environments. Future exposure. The information above shows exposure of people and infrastructure today, but to plan well it is important to think further ahead and consider how exposure may change with time. Click the arrows to learn more. Movement from North to South Island. Between 2018 and 2023, around 86,000 moved from the North to South Island for a more affordable lifestyle. This shift slightly reduces the number of people living near volcanoes. However, approximately 76% of New Zealand's population remains on the North Island. Population increases. New Zealand's population grew by 0.7% in 2025, mainly from immigration and rising birth rates. Much of this growth is happening in Auckland, which sits on the active Auckland volcanic field. So, exposure is increasing as more people live close to potential eruption sites. As Auckland expands, new infrastructure developments may expand into hazard zones, further increasing exposure. Rising tourism. In 2025, tourist numbers returned to pre-COVID levels, meaning more visitors are spending time in New Zealand, increasing number of people who could be exposed if an eruption occurred today. Tourists also engage greatly in adventure tourism, often getting close to volcanic areas, which slightly increases chance of exposure. Kaitaki Connect.